Hello, everybody. Welcome to another series of Simon Says. I have two great guests. They're really into the entertainment industry this time. We have a man who's just synonymous with the radio station 3AW, does Sunday nights, has been around. He did Nightline for 25 years, been involved that way, has come up with some great ideas. Mr. Simon Owens, welcome.
Good on you, Simon. Lovely to make your acquaintance. And I must say, although I'm not a football follower as such, the 1980s was my teenage years, and as an Essendon supporter, to see Simon Madden out there on the field, with all those other great names, there was just something really cool about that there was a player who had the same name as mine. So it's an honour to meet you, I have to say.
Thank you, Simon, and you can just keep going on about that as long as you like. That's very nice. But beforehand, a man who's a comedian, a stand-up comedian, a comedy writer, a comedy actor, very well known for one of his characters, a suburban footballer. But they were great and wonderful. Tom's Siegert. I better get this right, mate, because you've got a lot of vowels, and it is Siegert, isn't it? Is that correct?
Oh, it is incorrect, but it doesn't matter. Everyone gets it wrong. How I always explain it to MCs who are introducing me for gigs is it's Gert by C in reverse. So Siegert. So Siegert. But no one gets it right, so don't stress.
I love that, because I will never forget that now. But I'm going to call you Gertsy from now on. That's what I'll do. Now, look, gentlemen, thank you very much. We're all Melbourne-based people, so we're going through the strangest, probably the strangest year in our lives. How are you coping? First, Simon, how are you coping?
Well, I have to say, it's a terrible, terrible thing to say, because I know people are going through such a shocking time with businesses and family struggles, and especially people with young ones at home having to homeschool, kids. I've got teenage kids. My wife is a teacher's aide, so she's not able to work, so she's at home. The kids, year 8 and year 12, the two who are still at school, so they're both homeschooling. And I just got retrenched in June, but I'm still at 3AW part-time. And they keep calling me up to fill in. So I've earned more money in the last couple of months than I would have if I'd still been on full pay. So I'm at home most of the time with my family, loving lockdown. It's just been fantastic for me. And again, I feel terribly guilty saying that.
No, look, it's one of my old sayings. It's not what happens to you; it's how you handle it. So you're handling it very, very well. That's great. And Tom, what about you? As a performer, live performer, there's not a lot of work around at the moment.
There is very little. It's only been the last, probably the last 2 weeks that I've really accepted that this is here for the long haul. I did fight it for a while and knocked back a lot of those Zoom gigs that are going around, but I have accepted a couple now, and I was a bit late to the party, but they're good fun. You've got to, you're not getting the instant feedback that you get with a live comedy crowd, but look, they're okay for what they are. They're okay, and
thank you for joining this little Zoom fest. Very kind of you.
No dramas, and and as you can tell by the knock on the door there, I'm at home with the kids. I've got younger kids, so 3 kids under 7.
Very
which has been tough. One of them homeschooling, but I was lucky. I've probably 4 or 5 times in the last 5 years I've thought really seriously about going full-time with my stand-up, but I don't know whether it was a lack of self-belief or self-confidence or what it was, but I've always hung on to my day job, and I'm very, very thankful that that's happened now, because a lot of my mates, in the comedy industry, there's just nothing, and it'll be the last thing that gets going. I think dance floors and packed comedy rooms will be probably the last things. There'll be 70,000 at the G before there's 200 people jammed into a small room for comedy. So very lucky I hang on to that job. And same with Simon, just really enjoying the extra time with the kids. Just loving it.
That's good. That's good. That's a good positive out of it. Now I've got a couple of guitars in the background there. Now I'm a very much part-time in a band, and you can guarantee that we won't be playing to live people until about 2036, I think, the way it's going. So it's a little bit of fiddling around with the guitar in the study. Now, look, boys, as I said, thank you. I love talking to people. I love talking to people about football, of course, but I love talking about people outside of football and what they do. And now, Simon, how did you get? You really ridiculously long time, 25 years involved in radio. How did you get into that?
It all goes back to, if you want the longer story, it all goes back to my uncle, who was a
Oh,
man.
look, please, a long story. We're here for another 2 months. You know that.
It goes back to my uncle, who was a man named Jeff Cork. Now, most people sort of wouldn't remember his name, but he was the first man on television in Victoria when TV started in 1956. And he was Graham Kennedy's original sidekick before Bert moved across from Channel 7. And he became Corky, King of the Kids, all that sort of thing. But he had a very big radio and television career in the 1950s into the 60s, and until he had a falling out with Graham Kennedy and it all fell apart. But he used to sit at home and when we had family gatherings and stuff, he had this beautiful voice. And he used to tell stories about when he was managing a radio station, and the midnight to dawn announcer or the late night announcer would be drunk as a skunk, and he'd have to go down to the studio in his dressing gown, kick the announcer out, and finish the shift himself. And I thought, that's the industry I want to work in.
Which side of that?
Well, both, whichever way you can get in. But he passed away, sadly. He was always dead against the idea of me going into radio because, as you know, media it's just such a cutthroat industry. Yes. And he said, no, you get a real job and just don't even consider it. But when he passed away, Bert Newton was at the funeral, and so was Philip Brady. And yes. And my auntie had pointed out Philip Brady. This was about 1992, I think, 1993 maybe. And my auntie pointed out Phil and said, "Oh, that's Philip Brady. He's doing the 3AW nighttime show with Bruce Mansfield, who I knew as Uncle Roy." And she said, "You should go and have a chat to him." And so I had a quick chat with Phil, and it was lovely. But then I sent him a letter, or a fax it might have been. I sent him a fax to say, would you mind if I came in and watched you and Bruce one night? And Phil, and a week later I hadn't heard back, and I thought, oh, well, forget that, he's not interested, doesn't care. And then I was at work at the Commonwealth Bank, and Phil sent a second fax saying, oh, perhaps you didn't get my first fax, you'd be more than welcome. So I went in one Tuesday night, and I was terrified, but I just loved it. There's Uncle Roy himself and Philip Brady, both legends, doing this show and being very funny. And the producer, a lady named Paige McGinley, said that I was welcome back any time. And Phil said, oh, anytime you want to come in, buddy. So for 2 years, I'd go in every Tuesday night and just hang out. And then I started, because I'd grown up with Uncle Roy's humour, Bruce Mansfield's humour. Yes. So I recognised a lot of the style of what they did. So I started saying, oh, Bruce should say this, Phil should say this. And Paige said, there's an intercom button there, feed them the line. Just when you think it's right, just feed them a line. So I did, and Bruce and Phil had come out and said, oh, very funny joke there, and I'm in heaven. And eventually they went through 3 producers in that time, because Nights was always a stepping stone. And it was, and when the third producer left, Rowena, her name was, when she was leaving, Phil said, go and see Steve Price and see if you can get the job. So I made an appointment, went and saw him. Price, he sat there. There's Steve Price, grumpy little thing as he is. He sat there. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to work with Bruce and Phil. And he said, no, everyone sees that as the stepping stone. Is it the news and current affairs? Do you want to, more fun stuff? What exactly are you looking for? What do you want to do in radio? And I said, well, no, actually, I really want to work with Bruce and Phil. And he said, all right, well, I'm sick of having to interview people for this job every 8 months or so. So, yeah, job's yours.
And for 25 years.
And then, 25 years later, I'm still sort of there.
That's fantastic, mate. That's now in that vein, Tom. Now, how does someone get into stand-up comedy? Because I've seen successful comics on stage, and I've seen people bomb, and I know how I've seen people die on stage. Yep. And it's a hard, like when anybody says it's a hard gig. How did you get into it?
Well, pretty much anyone can do it. It's not like a plumber or a doctor or where you need a certificate or you need to go to anyone with confidence can do it, which is a good thing and also a bad thing is if you've seen bad stand-up. But I grew up in the country in Wodonga, and there was no comedy scene at all. Did not know what stand-up comedy was until I did enjoy my English. Really, I was a terrible student. Loved English, loved putting a sentence together and creative writing, and probably the one thing I really enjoyed at school. And when I eventually moved down to Melbourne when I was about 20 to have a kick of footy with some mates, I I was down the SB Hotel having a few beers. I was on a date with a girl, and we were having a couple of beers out the front of the SB, and this girl was going around handing out flyers to go and see a comedy show in the Gershwin Room. And I was 20, maybe 21, had never seen stand-up comedy before. It had never crossed my mind, and it was $10 to get in, and we went out the back, and it was like another door had opened in my life. Like I was just watching. I could not believe that people were just getting on stage with a microphone, and I must have been lucky and got a really good afternoon of comedy. And I remember I laughed non-stop for 3 hours, and I still remember on the way out the girl just said, "Wow, I've never seen anyone be so into something." And I was like, yeah. She said, "You'd love to do that, wouldn't you?" I said, I think that's what I want to do. And I had a really boring, mundane job at the time. I was a dental technician. I reckon I might have made your mouth guard at one stage. I did a lot of the AFL mouth guards.
Oh, right.
And I used to sit there. It was so boring with my little Bunsen burner, just waxing up teeth. And I did it for 4 years, and I just had a little notepad next to me. And again, it was my lack of confidence, and I'm not naturally a really confident person. So a lot of people would say, "I want to do comedy," and a week later they'd go do comedy. It took me 4 years of just writing down ideas, and eventually I got the confidence to take the stage. But again, I didn't tell anyone about it. I was living with 3 mates at the time. I told them I was seeing a girl, which I wasn't, which gave me an excuse to have a shower and put my hair and go out with no questions asked. And I'd go out. I was living this little secret life as an open mic comedian. And I did that for 12 months before one of my mates was at the pub and sprung me and was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, I've been doing it for about 12 months. And so that's basically where it started. You've just you need 5 minutes to start off. Any open mic night will give you 5 minutes, and
That's good to hear, mate, because everybody thinks that a comedian is just, bang, it's easy for them, because look, if you do it well, it looks so easy. But in a whole lot of areas of life, people don't have that confidence. And taking that next step, like I know people who'd get in, who'd go into a radio station and would just freeze in front of a mic, let alone freeze in front of a TV, would freeze in front of a mic. And I've had my little share of radio and TV, and I keep saying, I've done really well because I have a face for radio and a voice for writing. So I've had my moments in the sun too. But it's really nice because I'm big on how people overcome obstacles. So even that confidence thing, Tom, just that confidence of building up that confidence is not easy, is it?
No, not at all. And I reckon I'd been doing it for 5-6 years where it wasn't, someone would do the last minute call. Someone always pops their head in the green room and says, "Tom, you're on in 2," where I just wouldn't feel physically sick and just like, how can I get out of this? Can I, light a fire in the corner or, how can I get out of this? And I loved it, but didn't enjoy it. Like it was my passion, but I honestly didn't enjoy it. And then I think I did it was a Melbourne Comedy Festival one year where I said, this is going to end. I'm doing 3 or 4 gigs a week. I'm worrying myself sick. So I asked to do the Exford Hotel MC every night for the Melbourne Comedy Festival. It was a free room. So basically there was people there to have a drink with their friends and you were disrupting their night.
Yes.
It was terrible. Couldn't be worse. And one night a guy got stabbed while I was on stage. It was in the Sun, made the Herald Sun. Couldn't have got a worse room for comedy. But I said, I'm just going to do it. And I did it probably 25 nights in a row. And it was like breaking in a horse, I guess. I got out the other end and was just, you know what? I feel okay now. I still get the little butterflies, but nothing like what I used to get.
Well, no, that's good. If you're getting butterflies before performance, that's good because you're going to have that arousal level, not too aroused, not too. So that's really good. No,
now I'm concerned if I don't. Now there'll be 200 people in a room and I won't have butterflies, and I'll be like, this is not good. I need to get something going. And,
I'll pull rank a little bit a long time ago. Like you'd run out in the. So somewhere like Waverley, you'd run out and they said there'd be about 60,000 people there. And then you get out and you look around and you say, oh, there's only 40,000. You get disappointed. It's a big stage, But just on that, Simon, like again, performance industry, Any nerves, any time when you thought, oh, this is too hard? Or by the sound of it, you were just right into it early?
For me, the nerves come when I have to do something serious, when I actually have to be a proper radio announcer. I've always seen the beauty of 3AW is the difference between all the different programs. You've got Ross and Russ now in the morning, who are just in a class of their own.
Yeah.
Neil Mitchell does the news and current affairs and hard hitting, rah, rah, rah. Dee Dee's there to lighten things up a bit, but she's also she's a journalist herself, so she can do the news and stuff. And then Tom, news and current affairs again. Then you got your sport, your money, and then nights with Dennis now, but back in the day when it was us, where we were there to almost do everything that 3AW didn't stand for. We hated doing any news and current affairs and stuff. We'd just simply fart around and enjoy ourselves. And that's what the audience actually want at that time of night. They just want to relax and enjoy. You don't want to go to bed hearing that 30 people have died in a bus crash in Bolivia. It's not something you want to go to sleep with. You want to go to sleep having a laugh at the fact that Phil backed his car into his letterbox that day, or stuff like that, just light-hearted stuff. So when it actually, so that's what I've done for 25 years. It's my job is to distract people from what's actually happening in the real world.
Yeah, that's good.
And then so when news actually happens, and we've had it like the fires earlier this year and stuff, to actually go on and be serious and have to be accurate and stuff, that's when I get nervous.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's a good point, because it's taken up at serious levels. From that, I always like the project because they do have serious, but there's a lot of fun around the seriousness.
Exactly.
And it's a nice balance where
they do it well.
And these days, the news now is so. And, with social media and there's so much pressure, it's getting big. Everything's bigger and bolder and stronger. And, so it's good to get a nice balance and things like that.
The thing I admire about Tom and other stand-up comics, though, Tom, you guys have that thing where you get out there and there's a crowd there in front of you and you go, let me tell you about this. And if it's not, if for some reason the crowd doesn't warm to it, you've got immediate feedback that can destroy your confidence. With the radio. With the radio, we don't have that. I go on air and I go, I did this, and fun. And then you finish the show and your producer's saying, oh, yeah, good show. And you're looking at them thinking, was it really? And the only feedback we get is the ratings. And so I'm a very shy person naturally. I don't, if I walk into a room full of people, I'm terrified of making small talk and conversation. But put me behind a microphone and I go, okay, well, people are only listening to me if they want to listen to you. If they don't like what I'm doing, they can switch off. If they don't like what you're doing, they get up and walk out and you see it.
Yeah. You never get off stage in comedy thinking, I wonder how that went.
Yeah.
It was, you're well aware of how it went.
Well, it always reminds me, it was a long time ago, I saw this young comic and he got on stage and he'd just come back from America and he sort of had a nice audience. We were very friendly. It was a new place, one of the pubs, knew a bloke, and he was doing different things every night. And he had comedy night on Friday night, so we went along. And he got up and he's telling, he'd come out of America, he was telling drug jokes, and he was about 2 points off what the people in there, and he'd see him, and in the end there was this polite little applause as he walked off, rather than being, he could have been burnt anywhere else. And he could, even before he got to the wing, you could see his own mind. And I remember watching him die, and I thought, this is fantastic. And I'm not a nasty person. I said, this bloke is learning so much about not what to do, because there's great examples of what to do, but there's also great examples of not what to do. And he just learnt that I've got to match the audience, my jokes to the audience, and he hadn't done that. So And Tom, I was going to say, with you starting, and like one of you, and I've worked with you, I've seen you with the Suburban Footballer, which is a wonderful character. How did that come about?
So I'm a footy nut, local footy nut. So I played my first game in under 10s for Yak and Dander, and it's just
excuse me, just say that again. Under 10s for Yak and Dander. Isn't that so Australian?
And it was just my footy career is it's just been a hard luck story. I'll tell you quickly. In under 10s, my because it was in the country, we only used to play every second week. So we'd play a week off, we'd play the following week. Anyway, we made the grand final in my first ever year for Yak and Dander. And so I've got all my gear on, ready to go. It's 2 weeks after the prelim. I'm ready to go to the grand final, and I just see my parents in the kitchen looking at the bit of paper where the games are all played, and they're whispering to each other, and they're both going red, and I could sense something wasn't right, and I went over and said, "Is everything right?" I would have been eight years old, and they sat me down. They said, "Tom, we've stuffed up the grand final. It was a week after the prelim, so it was last week." And as an 8-year-old, loved my footy. I cried for a week, and my mum, I still remember. She said, "Tom, you're only 8. You're going to play forever. You're you're going to get a chance to play in many more grand finals." And I'm 42. I played footy last year, and I still never played in another grand final.
But that is so true, isn't it? I mean, like, it's just, if they had said, if Melbourne Footy Club, when they sacked Norm Smith, they'd been in 3 or 4 or 5 premierships, they said, "You'll never play in another one." Until now, all the Melbourne supporters went, "Oh, of course, you're joking." It's how many players. It's not how many players play in a grand final or premiership. It's how many players don't, and that's in any league.
For sure. It might have said something about my social status at the club that no one had contacted me in that week, letting me know that I didn't turn up to the grand final.
They said, "Oh, he's not serious about his football. He's not serious about his football."
Can I throw in a quick radio story that has to do with football? Hearing Yak and Dander is great. Keith McGowan, who used to do the Midnight to Dawn program, used to do a weekly football report on a Monday morning. And it was written for him. He would write part of it, and the other part would be written by Ash Long, who's a journalist. And it was the Upper Gunnawarra Football League report. And it was Keith would report on these country matches and people who'd been bussed in to play against the Upper Gunnawarra club, and there were always stories of Stinky McGee ended up with a broken leg after he fell off the scoreboard, and there was full of different stories. One day he's gone on air and spoken about an all-in brawl in which the umpire got eye gouged, and the coach got his head smashed in, and this all-in brawl, and it ended up being broken up by the police and stuff. And so he's finished his report, he's gone to an ad break, and the studio line rang, and it was a prominent journalist who wanted the contact details for the Upper Gunnawarra Football League so he could chase up the story. But the whole thing was fictitious.
Yes, of course.
And Keith even got a really filthy call from a guy one day who decided that he wanted to go up and check out Upper Gunnawarra. So he's got in his car and driven there, expecting to find this beautiful country town with this football field. No, there's like 2 farmhouses and a post office. He was furious that he'd been lied to all this time.
Oh, no, that's beautiful. Well, just in that about both of you, you're in the art of writing. So, I saw, Tom, that you've done Foxtel Stand Up Australia. You've been a comedy writer, and another name I can never say, Kinney, K-O-N-N-E, I think is Kinney.
Yeah, Kinney.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because it's like someone saying Kenny, Kenny, but it's Kinney. G'day, Kinney. Now you've been a writer for that. So how do you see your writing skills in and coming up with original material? I'll ask both of you, but you've, Tom, being because I think comedians have to be really, really smart, and I like them commenting on anything because they take this that's not funny, and that's not funny, and put it together and get it funny. And I think that's a really, really good skill. And I think Ross Stevenson is one of the best at it on 3AW because I've been an avid listener for ages, and there's something on 5:45 that's not funny. There's something comes on at 6:15 that's not funny, and about 20 to 70 puts them together. It's hilarious. So So Tom, for you, come out with original material.
Yeah, I actually, and I'm not on here to plug it, but
please
with all this downtime, I've actually written a book, the Suburban Footballer book, and it was
fantastic.
And it's been selling really well. My goal was to sell it at gigs, but obviously the gigs are no more at the moment. So I did pop it online, and it's been going fairly well. But it was such a different skill to comedy, the comedy writing, and I've seen a couple of docos from Seinfeld, and all the top comedians say it. Basically, you write your joke as short as possible, go away from 24 hours, come back, and then try and half it. It's all about getting the joke in as quick as possible, whereas writing a book allowed me to just elaborate on everything. And it was a different way of doing it, and I really, really enjoyed it. So that's a... Yeah.
Well, hang on, what's the name of it?
So it's just the suburban footballer. So it's
and how can we get it online? Where do we go to?
Probably just my Facebook page at the moment, or Gumroad is the website I'm selling it through. Gumroad.
Never miss an opportunity to promote yourself. All right.
I would. And it's not War and Peace, but if you're into your local footy, you'll love it. She's a pretty simple read, big borders, big font, lots of pictures. It's a
type of book. Hey, any colouring pages for me? Oh, that'd be really good too, please.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of that.
And just on that, Simon, like on radio, you just talked before about feeding in information from the producers area into the people on radio. You've have to write your own stuff too.
Well, yeah. The thing about that though is I don't write in any sense. When I sit down in front of the mic and I'm about to do a week of midnight to dawn, so you're doing 5.5 hours overnight with very few things to fill the time. It's just you've got to come up with something and try and get the audience engaged and calling in. But I don't ever write anything. So
you concoct or you think up, in that form,
Everything I do is pretty much a reaction to everything that's going on around me. So when Bruce and Phil were on air and they were doing their shtick, I'd listen to them and they'd talk about, I'm taking my dog down to get washed tomorrow, and Bruce would say, oh yeah, that's you cheap lousy. You'd spend the money on getting your dog washed, but you wouldn't wash it yourself. But you're a tightwad. How can you spend that money? And Phil would retort with something, and in the meantime, I'd think, I'll feed Bruce a line. He probably takes it to the car wash because it's cheaper, and just push the dog through. So that's sort of where my joke is. But if I was to sit down like Tom and go, right, here we go, I'm going to do some stand up. I'm going to write a joke. Man wants to wash his dog. I couldn't do it. I don't know how to create that. I just hear a conversation and throw in the quick witty retort.
Yeah, that's the witty retort. It's always good to have someone who's a lead and you can just throw a line in.
Somebody I love along those lines is Glenn Robbins. Glenn Robbins, if you're sitting and chatting to him, lovely guy. He's not the funniest man in the world. He sits there and he has a lovely chat and it's fantastic. But you've got back when they used to do the panel, Tom Gleisner and Rob Sitch and Santo and all that bouncing off each other. Glenn would sit on the side of the bench there. These three are all bouncing off each other, and all of a sudden, Glenn comes out with that one line that is just so much funnier than anything anyone else has said. And all of a sudden, they're all wetting themselves with laughter because Glenn was so funny. And that's what I love, being able to sit back and be, okay, I don't need to be centre of attention. I'm just going to come in with that zinger when it's appropriate.
But that's a good one too, because then you've got all the time, everything's happening. You've got time for someone to just go, or come in and just go bang. So you actually can pick your moment and pick your target. So but it's also a great skill to have to be able to do that too. Good. That's good. It's great talking to you, boys. Now, Tom, I was going to talk about comedians that you look up to, or are there people that you look up in the industry? So look, I like what he does. I like the way he does it. I could learn from him. Do you do that in that industry?
Oh, you probably don't want to take too much from one person. I think like anything you want to, because then there's a lot of comedians like, I'm not sure if you've known the Australian comedian Greg Fleet. There was there was a stage in Australia where all the young comedians wanted to be Fleety, and you could just tell they just became little clones of Fleety. And now, obviously, the world's got a lot smaller, and it's so easy to tune into the American acts, and so a lot of people are becoming little clones of Bill Burr and all these comedians. So I guess I take a little bit out of each one, but hopefully not too much that it's recognisable, if that makes sense. But
it's good, because I think I'm interested. I'm always open. If you're in the public eye, you have to be able to perform or speak, and you just look at how people like the deadpan comics. Jack Benny of the years ago, who was so deadpan, and then they can throw lines out, and they look like it's just a normal conversation. And then of course the timing. I've always been fascinated how good comics are able to throw the line out, wait to see what the reaction is, and then see if they can shift it this way or the other way. It's very good. And Simon, for you, is it people? I mean, obviously you've gone into the field of radio where you liked it, but is it people you look up to and say, look, I like the way they do it, or I could learn from that, I could pick something from that?
Influences in the past, I'd have to say, early on, Blackers and Unker doing Breakfast on 3AW, when they did Story Time, and they also had a little joke section. Harry and Clary, it was just two guys in a pub, and Norma the barmaid would be there, played by Bruce, and they'd insult Norma, but then there'd be a setup and a punchline. They just had an old joke book, and they'd just go, "Oh, we'll do that joke today."
Yeah.
And then they'd just sort of ad-lib around it for a couple of minutes. But when they did story time with two people doing about 7 voices and just seamlessly leaping from one character to another, it was unbelievable radio for me as a child. And that made me think, wow, that's something I really want to do. And also Gavin Wood and Molly Meldrum on Eon FM. Gavin Wood used to do the breakfast show, and Molly would join him every Tuesday and Thursday. And Molly and Gavin on those days would do Batman and Robin, just a piss take of the old camp TV show. And Gavin played Robin as a very flamboyantly gay sidekick who used to call Batman Batsy. And it was all, "Oh, Batsy, oh, this is so exciting. We're doing security at the MCG." And Molly was the stern senior. "Shut up, Robin. Behave yourself. You put those tights on properly," and stuff like that. And again, that was just brilliant. I listened to that and think, wow, to actually create stuff like that is just so good. So they're the two influences that I'd really take from my early, from when I was young. I used to ring John Blackman in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, at 5:30. I'd get up early and actually call into the program just so I could talk to John Blackman. And I was 13 years old and I had nothing to say. And he must have really got sick of me calling him every week. But that's what I did. But in modern times, I'm very impressed with Christian O'Connell. He does a great job on Gold. I don't listen live, obviously. I hear the podcast most days. And he's a very clever broadcaster, very, very gifted communicator. And a lot of the stuff that he does sort of the same sort of talkback topics we would do on our station. But I listen to the way he sets it up and I go, wow, you've got a real skill. It's a craft that I certainly haven't mastered. And the other one I think who's probably the most talented person on radio at the moment would be Jace Hawkins from Jason PJ on KISS. He is everything I would love to be in terms of a radio personality. He is so witty, very, very clever, very quick-witted. He can have a go at the audience, get a caller online, and he'll tease them mercilessly. But you really love him. He's actually just a funny, lovely guy, even though he's being mean to a caller. Now, if I did that, I'd be howled down by our audience if I was ever mean to anyone.
Yeah. Well, now, just on that podcast now, are you doing any podcasts? I said never miss an opportunity to promote anything.
We podcast our Remember When show. So Philip and I do Remember When on 3AW on a Sunday night from 10 till 12. So we podcast that. And I have just launched, we used to have a segment on Sunday nights that started back in the 1990s with on Remember When, and it was the Mervyn Purvis Quick Quiz. And it was just Bruce playing a character of Mervyn Purvis, but Bruce was the quiz master. So he would ask questions. Philip, myself, and another guy named Ian Armstrong were the contestants, along with Mervyn Purvis. And of course, he was asking very difficult questions. We'd never know the answers, but Mervyn knew because Mervyn was played by Bruce. So Mervyn was this smart aleck little character, and it was 5 minutes each week of wonderful radio. And I started archiving and thinking, I've got to keep these because they're great. Yes. It's like that Story Time and Batman and Robin. It's just 5 minutes of madness with Bruce being the host, but also the contestant. And I started archiving them. We've just started podcasting those. So we're putting them out 2 a week, every Tuesday and Friday. And I've got 500 episodes that I can just put out over the next couple of years.
That's because it's interesting, because that's the way radio's changing. Even though we still have the standard radio, there's a whole lot more people. It's like TV. Like we used to have to wait and watch the stations. Now you can watch anything in your own time.
Yeah.
Same thing now with radio. You can listen in your own time. So you can still have the same thing, but that's the one of the great changes.
So Simon, does that included in the ratings? Simon Owens, if people download it on the podcast, do you get credit for that?
No, so the radio ratings are simply based on people who listen live.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, a podcast, of course, downloads. Downloads are what matter there, and you have the advertising, the pre-roll and post-roll advertising. Top and tail. So the station will make money out of it. They won't make a fortune out of the Merv and Purvis quiz, but it's something that the audience like, and it's also something that you can just Google at any time. I also do another thing. I've got the Simon Owens archive. So I've got a Facebook page, a YouTube page, and 3AW has an archive podcast that I've set up. So if you look up 3AW archive, and I put old bits and pieces up. I just got some audio the other day from a guy, Jamie Kelly, who sent me some audio of the opening of Tullamarine Airport in 1st of July 1970. And Norman Banks, who was a crusty old announcer from the day, was on the very first flight. So they did an outside broadcast from the airport, and so I'll put that sort of thing up, and it's it's fascinating to listen to him saying.
Nice little bit of history. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
I will say I grew up in Airport West, and so a day out sometime was just walking up to the Essendon Airport and playing on the playground, looking at the planes. When we got to playing the play, watching the planes, and then when we got to when they had this real airport, that Tullamarine Airport. Oh my gosh, how good was that? Yeah. Now I'm showing my age. Now, Tom. Now I just want to ask Tom a question because I want to get back to Simon. Now, Tom, if you walked into a footy club or you walked into a pub, what's your first drink of choice?
My first drink of choice. Well, funnily enough, I've been a fair old binge drinker in the past, but I'm having 12 months off the off the beers, and one of my big concerns, because I would walk into 60, 70, 80 footy clubs a year I would have walked into last year, and I would always set up, and then I would have a beer with the president or the captain and maybe get a bit of goss, and it was a real icebreaker, and to show I was, I wasn't just there doing a cash grab. I was, and I was really worried I was going to lose that, and it has amazed me how many people say, "Good, oh mate, good on you. I've got to do that," and it's just been the complete polar opposite to what I thought. So my drink of choice at the moment is I actually prefer not if they see me drinking with the water, it's almost like it brings attention that I'm not drinking. So I sort of don't drink anything. I'll have a little water behind the curtain, but normally it was definitely a beer drinker. Yeah.
Because Simon, is it true that you're still a West Coast cooler drinker?
Yes, yes.
And you can still get them.
I'm not terribly masculine in that sense. I do love a West Coast cooler. It was my first drink as a young teenager, and it is still my drink of choice today. It's getting harder to come by them. And I've openly said I should be an ambassador for West Coast cooler because I think after all these years, I'm the only person who still talks about it.
No, that's funny. It's funny. I saw that somewhere, and I didn't like this. My wife and I have a good friend who is she drinks West. Sorry, I didn't say she. I'm not trying to make any statements here, but she drinks West Coast cooler, and I couldn't believe, like, we had a barbecue and, people bring, and she brought half, or wouldn't even be half of it, she probably brought two, not a big drink at all. And I thought, you can still get them. And then I saw that you can still get them.
Yeah, they're hard to come by, but if you look hard enough, they're there. And that's my birthday present each year. When the family say, "Oh, what do you want for your birthday?" I say, barbecue shapes and West Coast cooler. And it's been that way for the last 30 years.
That's a nice mix. They go hand in hand. That sounds like it's really good. Now, we're getting towards the end because I'm trying to make this nice and neat and tidy. But I'm not sure if this is the right question for you guys in your industry, but I'm big on leadership and how it affects you and how you see it. Can you talk about leadership in the comedy industry?
Oh, it's funny. I grew up around footy clubs, and I was captain of my local footy club in Caulfield Bears there for 10 years, and I've always loved the idea of leadership, and then going into comedy, it is the most individual thing that I've ever been involved in, and you find friends in the industry, but at the end of the day, it's every man for himself, and it's so different to footy because leadership's always been big in footy, but especially now, it's just massive. And towards the end of my career, we got a leadership guy in, and I was late 30s. I was thinking, I would have loved this when I was early 20s. There was none of that when I started out. But now, you know, they've got the mentoring and all that. And I just love it. But yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't when I was playing a lot of footy. But yeah, to answer your question, comedy. No, not a lot. There's a lot of people you probably wouldn't want to follow, but not many. No, not a lot.
Good. And Simon, within your industry, do you see that there's good and bad leadership, or there's leadership needed in areas?
Yeah, look, there is. There's been some great managers over the years of AW at different levels. Yeah, program directors and general managers and stuff. Graham Mott was a great leader for 3AW. I thought we really flourished under him. Steve Price as program director taught me so much. And then some of the personalities, like I did 2 years working with Ernie Sigley, and you learn a lot when you work with Ernie Sigley, and from veterans like Bruce and Phil and Keith McGowan as well. They just had so much knowledge. We've also had some absolute shockers. You know, we've just been taken over. When I say we, 3AW,
yes.
And that radio network, which was the Macquarie radio network, has now been absorbed and taken over by Nine, and Nine have taken things in a much better direction than we were under with Macquarie. Macquarie might have done wonders with 2GB when they pinched Alan Jones all those years ago. 2GB flourished under Macquarie, but when they took over 3AW, they really killed it, and they were idiots, frankly.
Hang on, let's not beat around the bush. Tell me what you really think.
Yes, if only I could really give an opinion. No, but under Channel 9, they've, like 4BC, our Brisbane station, under Macquarie, just became it was 2GB just relayed. They sacked everyone up there, and it was just a relay feed of 2GB. Under Nine, they've brought it back. They've now got a breakfast show happening. They've got a drive show happening. They've returned a lot of the programs in Melbourne on 3AW back to being local programs. They've now got Dennis Walter in night replacing John Stanley. And it's not that John Stanley's lousy, but Sydney and Melbourne, Ross Stevenson always says they're not two different cities, they're two different countries. And Channel 9 have really moved things in a great direction for us in Melbourne.
That's good. Now, I'd like to finish with, I always ask people, and it's not always an easy question, but I love to ask it. If you were mentoring somebody coming into your industry, some young person coming in your industry, Tom first, what's one thing you could tell them?
We was talking about this saying the other day, and I reckon I've walked around since I was 10 years old with Nike tops on, Nike Air tops, with the slogan, just do it, underneath. And probably one of the most famous slogans in the world. And I've never really thought about it. And I reckon the last year or so, and I've talked to a few people lately, it is the greatest saying the greatest saying ever. If you just have to do it. You are not going to learn sitting at home. You're not going to learn listening to podcasts. You're not going to learn watching it on Netflix. You've just got to do it. And if you want to write a book, you just got to pick up a pen and write. If you want to get fit, you've just got to put some runners on and go for a run. You just do it. And that would be my advice to anyone, not just comedy, anyone.
Oh, that's very, very deep and meaningful words from a bloke who's supposed to be funny. That's very good, serious words. Very good, serious words. And Simon, what about you? If there's some bloke wanted to get into radio, and you said, "Well, this is something you've got to think about."
If you're outside wanting to get in, the best thing you can do is try and do what I did, although it's a lot harder these days, and that is just somehow get yourself in the building. Yeah. Because if something comes up, like get in there as the cleaner, get in there as somebody who's making coffee or something, or sorting mail. If you can get in the building, then you're set. Because when a job comes up, if you've shown that you've got what it takes, then it's so much easier to employ someone you know to do a job than it is to look through resumes. So if you can get into the building, that's the start. If you are in the building and you're thinking, okay, I'm new at all this, what do I do? My only advice is know who your audience is and know what they want. And that can vary hour by hour. Yes. I'm not saying, what's Nova's audience. It's what's Nova's audience at 7 a.m, what's Nova's audience at 10 p.m. What do they want? Because at 7 a.m, they want a bit of Sam Pang and a lot of fun. At 10 o'clock at night, a Nova audience, they just want music. They don't want announcers rabbiting on telling them how great they are. They just want to hear dance music and stuff. So know your audience. And if you do that, and constantly question what you're doing. Am I putting this on the radio because I've got a gap to fill here, or am I putting this on because the audience want to hear it? Because there is a lot of radio which is just, okay, we've got these segments to fill these gaps.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not, so question, is it might have been great when you first did it, but is it still great?
It's still relevant. Relevancy, relevancy is really good. I always remember the great Max Walker, who's passed away, he's a great man, and he would have one speech and have 3 versions of it. This level, and this level, depending on the audience. And I remember talking to him about it. I said, that's really good, because some of it was a bit sport, some was a bit sporty and lowbrow, some was a bit highbrow, and then there was a business one. It was mainly the same story. So it's a very good point. Know your audience is really important. Gentlemen, and I use that term loosely, of course, and I'll say, look, Tom and Simon, thank you very much for your time. I love this. And in the situation we're in the world, I think we nice little balance of a little bit of seriousness, but a lot of fun, a lot of banter. Simon Owens, a great radio person. Tom, who's girt by sea, Tom Siegert, is living on an island. Thank you very much for your time. Fantastic. And hopefully people listen to this and people have some fun. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Good on you, Simon. Lovely to meet you. Lovely.
Good on you.
Good on you, Tom.
See you guys.